Good morning, everyone. It's Mr. Kowalczyk here. Today we're gonna play with overlapping triangles, Geometry Unit 8, Lesson 4. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna build on what we've talked about so far with regards to our 5 shortcuts and the corresponding parts of congruent triangles. So just a reminder, let's talk about our 5 shortcuts. If you can, go ahead and list them right up here without having to look at your notes. See if you can remember all 5 of them. Okay. Pause the video, see if you can remember any of them or all 5 of them. All right, cool. Hopefully you remembered some of them. So I'll jump in. We have side, side, side. Our second one's going to be side, angle, side congruency. And then I like to switch that one around, angle, side, angle. And then we have angle, angle, side. And our fifth and final one that we talked about is hypotenuse, leg. So those are our 5 congruency shortcuts. Now for our opener, I'm not going to actually do this one. I'm going to let you play with it and we can discuss it in class. In this particular figure below, how many triangles do you see? See if you can come up with an answer. Pause the video, go for that one, and then come up with an answer. Okay? All right, now overlapping triangles. That's the idea for today, what we're going to be focusing on. Now we're going to have diagrams that look like this one down here, and just like the warm-up up here, where we have triangles that overlap one another. We've got several different triangles that we can see in this one, as well as we saw in the opener. And what we want to do is we want to practice seeing the specific separate triangles. The separate is a big one, big word for today, in an overlapped diagram, right? So using the figures below and a colored pencil, redraw 2 potentially congruent overlapping triangles. So potentially congruent, that means when you look at this diagram, do you see 2 triangles that you think could be congruent that also overlap? And that overlapping is really important because if we just look at AEC and AED, or sorry, BEC and AED, those triangles certainly look like they could be congruent, but they don't overlap. So the goal for today, what we're trying to do is we're looking at overlapping triangles. So what I'm going to do with that one is I'm going to look at triangle BDC and triangle ACD. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to redraw them just as close as I can, an approximation to what they kind of look like. And I'm going to mark up what they have, the marks they have already on them from my diagram. So this is point C and this is point D. This is point B over here. I have 2 angles here that are congruent. And I also have an angle there that's congruent. Now, I can't mark this one over here because that doesn't go the whole distance from DC up to CB. So I can't do that. So I just start with these 2. Then I go over to triangle ADC here, and I mark that one up as well. So I've got 2 tick marks here, so that angle is going to be congruent. A is congruent to B. And then D down here is also going to be congruent. Nope, I made that. That's a mistake. I apologize. This is C here, so ignore that one right there. Same reason why I couldn't do it for this one, is that it doesn't go all the way over. So angle C is congruent to angle D right there. So we draw them separately. Now we're not trying to prove them congruent yet, but all we're doing is we're going to practice drawing them separately. Now, how do we apply this knowledge into geometry problems? Well, what we want to do is we want to look at the overlapping parts. What's going to be the same in both particular triangles? And we'll talk about that on the next page when we try a couple more of these problems. But when we're asked to identify congruent parts in overlapping triangles, congruent means the same, right? Overlapping triangles. It's first easier to draw the triangles separately. So that's really important. Then what we're going to do is we're going to search for shared angles and or sides and mark them accordingly. So if we were to just peek at these 2 triangles up here, the shared angle and side. Well, if I look, what I'm looking for is what's both green and yellow. So down here, I see this side, DC, is completely green and completely yellow. So that's going to be a shared side in both of these triangles. And I see it here as DC and DC. So I can make that mark that congruent in that particular situation. All right, let's move on to the next page and we'll try some of these problems. Let's jump into number 1 here. I'm actually going to pick a different color than that, excuse me, than that yellow because it didn't work very well. So I'm going to grab let's go with the green and blue. Okay. Separate and redraw the indicated triangles. Identify and label any shared angles or sides. So here we start out and they tell us what triangles we're supposed to focus on, which is really helpful. So I have ABC here. So I'm going to redraw that one. A, B, C. And then I also have DCB. D to C to B. And they're just approximations. They don't have to be exact. So I separate and redraw the indicated triangles, then identify and label any shared angles or sides. So in this case, my question is what's completely blue and green, right? So over here, what I see is that I've got side BC is completely blue and completely green, right? It's all, the whole entire side BC is within that triangle, the blue triangle and the green triangle. So that's going to be my congruent side right there. And I'm going to indicate it by saying that BC is congruent to BC. All right, let's try one more and then we'll skip ahead to the next section. So now I'm focused on triangle EFG, EFG, awesome. And then in blue, H to G to F. And there's my triangle there. So now I have FGH here. And then I also have FGE here. Redrawing them, I know it takes a little bit of time, but it's going to be really important to help see each of the triangles. Now, what's exactly the same? Well, if we want to look at it on this side, I see that side FG and side FG show up both completely in green and completely in blue. And then over here, they're all green and all blue, the whole side. So that's one way to see that we have that shared side there, and we can mark that congruent. FG is congruent to FG, a shared side. That's all we're supposed to do for these problems. We're not trying to prove congruency just yet, okay? All right, let's jump on over to the next page. I want you to do 3, 4, and 5 in class when we next meet. Now let's take a look at number 6, and that'll be our last problem that we're going to do together. First, we're going to separate and redraw that might be proof congruent. First, we're going to do that. Second, we're going to identify and label any shared sides or angles, just like we did. Then, number 3, this is a new one. State whether the triangles are congruent by one of our 5 shortcuts. Okay. So we're not told what triangles to focus on here, so we have to pick ones that we think might be congruent. So what I'm looking at is similar to the ones we did before, right? If we have this kind of situation here that we had with triangles FGE and FGH, they look similar, but this one is just flipped over, right? It's almost upside down, where this side down here on the bottom looks like it might be my shared side. So I'm going to play with those 2 triangles and see if I can prove congruency. So I'm going to start out with W to X to Z, and then my other one will be W, Y, X. So my first step is to redraw them. So I have W, Y, X, and please redraw them. I know that, again, some of you might be able to see it, but the situations are going to get more complex today and also in the coming days. And then I have a right angle here, Z, W, X, and this is going to be W here for the green. We go over to X and then up to Y, right angle here, congruent tick mark there. All right, now that was number 2, so I separate and redraw those. Number 2 is number 1. Number 2 says identify and label any shared angles or sides. Again, we're looking for what's completely blue and completely green. Do you see what's completely blue and green? Well, it's right here. We got green and blue right there for WX. So that's going to be congruent in both particular triangles. Now I need to list my things. I'm looking for 3 particular things that are going to be congruent to each other to prove these triangles congruent. And I see, oh, I made a mistake there. I got to make that 2 tick marks. So I see that ZW is congruent to YX. I also see that angle W is congruent to angle X right there. I can't, in these 2 separate ones, I can say that, but up here I couldn't say that. So I'm going to use 3 letters. Angle ZWX, this one right here, is congruent to angle YXW. YXW. Awesome. And then my third shared side, WX, is congruent to WX. So that's going to be my shared side. Now, this is a side, this is an angle, and this is a side. Now I've got to make sure that I'm in the right order, right? So I start at one of them, I go from my side. The next thing that I'm going to encounter as I slide along the triangle is that angle. And then the next thing after that's going to be a side. Side, angle, side. Same thing here. Side, angle, side. We go in that order. So that proves to us that triangle. Let's go ahead and start with ZWX. ZWX is going to be congruent to, corresponding, we have YXW. Triangle YXW by side, angle, side. And we're good. Okay, hope that was helpful. We're going to stop there for today's lesson. The rest of the practice problems you're going to get to do in class. All right, take care, and we'll see you in class.